Welcome to Uncontained, episode 008. I am your host, Aaron Static Render, and today we have half of the podcast, Comedy Supernova, Danny Franks. He's a former stand-up comedian and comedy club manager. We talk about some of his times on stage, along with some of the comedians that have come through the club. Some of them appearing on Saturday Night Live, some of them a little bit harder to deal with. I'll give you a hint. He wields a mallet and may be the original Fruit Ninja, along with three things that comedy clubs look for, or at least his comedy club looked for when hiring acts to perform. Here's a disclaimer. Just so you are aware, there are a couple of events and references in this episode that may be slightly outdated because, well, I recorded this show before I launched my podcast, and it's taken me just a little bit to get it on air. I just wanted to give you a heads up so you weren't confused on why I was talking about the Super Bowl or referring to not having launched my podcast yet. With that being said, here's episode 008 with Danny Franks. Danny, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. As we're recording this, we have not launched yet, so thanks for showing a little faith in the show here.
I have complete faith in you, guy.
Thank you. We've met only a couple times in the past. I've seen you on stage back when you were doing stand-up, back when I was working at KRNA.
Mm-hmm.
There was some show, it was in 2008 when Penguins was in its temporary location
After the flood.
Yeah, after the flood,
Yeah.
in its temporary location. And you were doing the warm-up, you were emceeing the show, and somebody in the crowd, I don't know who it was, but yelled out your punchline. And that you were going to do, and you didn't seem to like that very well for some reason. They thought they were helping you, but
Yeah, it probably irked me that I was building up to a punchline and then they take over.
I know I've had that happen before too, but it's like I don't know, jackasses. You got to deal with hecklers from time to time. I think you just called him a dick and moved on or something like that.
I think I dragged it out longer than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
You may have. I don't remember exactly where you went with it, but the essence was, hey, Dick, don't come to my job and do my shit, you know?
Yeah. So did you venture down to our open mics at all?
I did, yes. I was at your open mics when Andre was hosting them.
Yeah, Andre, yeah.
Before I moved out here to California. So like 2011, 2010-ish. To 2012, I was doing open mics.
Yeah, I mean, when we started open mics and when I started back in '99, our open mics were once a month, if that. It slowly progressed to 2 a month, and currently at Penguins they do every Wednesday. So I mean, the circuit has really grown in Cedar Rapids, and probably a lot of medium market comedy clubs, they showcase local talent during those shows, which is great.
Yeah. When I left, it was once a week at Penguins. Then you had multiple open mics in Iowa City, and they were popping up everywhere as I headed out to California. So it was cool seeing the scene grow.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a great place right there, and you're in just north of Oakland.
Yeah, in the Bay Area. I'm in Walnut Creek right now.
Yeah.
Was in Berkeley. Part of the reason I'm doing this show is maybe to network some more with some of the comedians, because getting your foot in the door out here is a little bit tougher than it was for me back home. Probably because of the radio station and whatever. So, I'm just doing this kind of networking, hoping to find out some tips, tricks to the trade on performing, on the business side of it. Also looking to get into doing some voiceover and stuff like that as well out here, which would be really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I don't know if you want to divulge the date that we're recording this, but you're right in the midst of SF Sketchfest right now.
Yes. Yes.
Which is an amazing festival. I mean, we don't have many comedy festivals here in the Midwest, but that SF Sketch Fest is, I know, one of the biggest.
Yeah, it kind of takes over the city, and then after that's over, you got the Super Bowl action going on here in San
Well,
Francisco.
that's right. It's in Levi. Yeah, it's at Levi Stadium.
Yeah.
I'm a 49er fan, so.
Oh, are
Oh
you?
yeah.
Oh, I'm actually a Bears fan, but I cheer for the Niners when they're playing out here, as long as they're not playing the Bears,
Yeah.
which they did this year and beat the Bears
I think twice.
by. They beat the Bears once this year. They only played
Yeah,
once.
that first game of the season. Yeah.
On a rare Robbie Gold field goal miss, like that happened. Well, like in the past, Robbie Gold was as good as gold,
Mm,
but that was the saying.
uh,
But he actually choked twice this year in the clutch. So
yeah.
I don't know.
From being in the Midwest, I'm just tired of the Bears talk. I really am. I mean, with all the national television, the three channels here, it's usually Bears, Vikings, Chiefs, or the Rams showing on television.
Packers.
Yeah, Packers. That's all we see. So I don't really get to see my Niners play very often here in the Midwest on the national stage.
Well, Danny, move on out here because every game is televised for the Niners. Every game is televised for the Raiders. If I want to see the Bears play, it's either a Monday night game, Thursday night game, if they have one of those, or I'm going to check out some bar that has the NFL Sunday ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to derail us from comedy. So
No, that's fine.
yeah,
we'll take this wherever this goes. It's your show, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. And with I've never been out to California. I mean, a lot of comics, once they feel they cannot progress anymore to I guess from open mics, they make a decision that it's either New York or California, LA mainly.
Yeah.
A lot of comics. One gentleman, Brooks Wheelan, came through Penguins. He started out at Penguins, moved out to LA, did really well. Took an internship out there, but did stand up on the side. Well, he then had one season on SNL.
Okay.
So he had one season on SNL, and he's just been going around doing tours. I don't know, burning himself out, but he's doing a lot of one-nighters. He does some weekend gigs at clubs, but he's touring the nation right now.
And as a comedian, you have to do that. When you have a name, go for it full tilt, like Kevin Hart or Chris Rock did. Comedians are only hot for so long. There's only a few that can stick around for a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with just being an old road dog either. Getting your hours set and just make it a job. And some people aspire to have the sitcom or the talk show, but there's a lot out there that make their living off of every weekend selling merchandise after the shows and then just going home during the week. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Why did you get out of doing stand-up comedy?
I did stand-up for about in between 8 and 10 years. I did a lot of MC work at Penguins, and I thought it would be a good career. So I put together a website, put together a stupid T-shirt, started contacting bookers, and I did that for about 2 years. Didn't go more than 2 states away. Probably had 2 to 3 gigs a month, which isn't much. But with feature pay, my family was growing. I think I had my son, my second kid, and it wasn't good for the family. The pay wasn't there. Plus, I was gone, sometimes 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
So I just decided, I'll just stay at my home club, enjoy the friendship of the comedians that come through. And just not do it anymore.
Okay, and then how long after you quit did you decide to get involved with your podcast, Comedy Supernova? I realized I hadn't said the name of it yet, but Comedy Supernova with Tim Sullivan?
Yes, Tim Tim's like I said, a road dog. He does a lot of gigs. I approached him on that about 8 months ago, and I think podcasting is a very safe and enjoyable outlet to do comedy. So he said, yes, I've been thinking about this too. Let's do it. We got together with some producers that have a studio. They pretty much, we talk into a mic for an hour and they just put it up whenever we ask them to. So I've actually haven't stepped on stage much in the last 5 years. I would say maybe 3 or 4 times. But
Okay.
but I when I managed Penguins Comedy Club, that was about 6 to 7 years ago. I mean, I was up every weekend doing the MC gig.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't been on stage as much since I moved out here, which sounds counterproductive of why you'd move to California. But I kind of got in with a job with hours that weren't too conducive to doing open mics and shows. And then I was like, okay, I need an outlet. So I'm like, I am going to focus on doing a podcast. And that's where my energy's gone now. Then maybe hoping to open up some doors with that later on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, my favorite podcast is Jimmy Pardo's Never Not Funny. It's by far he's one of the first people to start podcasting. I think he's celebrating ninth or 10th year right now. He's
Wow.
had over 500 or 600 episodes. I listen to Comedy Bang Bang, WTF with Mark Maron, You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes. Just it's a great outlet for comedians, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I listened to WTF, as you mentioned, and also listened to Nerdist quite a bit with Chris Hardwick. Have you listened to that one?
Yeah, that guy, he's been building for that Nerdist. I guess it's a network now, but I mean,
Yes.
I'd say 8 or 9 years ago, it was just like, oh, he's doing this little thing that's cute, and now it's literally a podcast, nerd resource. I want to say conglomerate. I mean that
In a way, it is, but
Yeah, I mean he's got the YouTube channels getting millions of hits. I mean he took his time and built it, and it's really good to see a guy like that work so hard and have it paid off. And he controls his intellectual property of Nerdist.
yeah. And I remember him back in the day hosting Singled
Yeah.
Out, and then I hadn't heard from him for many years, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, Chris Hardwick on Nerdist. Okay, I remember that guy. And yeah, then all of a sudden he's everywhere, walking or talking dead, talking bad, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to a few Nerdist shows, but my main one is Never Not Funny. And Mark Poulos, who's another road dog, he has a podcast too called Unbridled Enthusiasm. That was the first podcast me and Tim were on to promote ours.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. I haven't checked out the Jimmy Pardo one yet either. I heard you guys talking about it on your show, but I was listening to your show and didn't want to switch.
His show is amazing. I listen to it probably every other day. I go back to old episodes because he has, like I said, 600, 700 episodes or so, and I re-listen because I think the conversation he has with his guests are just so incredibly funny.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. It's called Never Not Funny.
Yes, it's probably one of the biggest comedy podcasts out.
Okay.
Yeah, and he came through Penguins, I want to say 9 years ago or whatever. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about starting this podcast thing, and I was hooked ever since he released his first episode. Like Pete Holmes, who I got to MC for back in 2000. He had the Pete Holmes show, which aired after Conan. He came through Penguins and came through Peoria, Illinois, where I emceed for him. He was a great guy too. His podcast is pretty funny too. It's called You Made It Weird.
Yes, yes, I've actually listened to that a couple times. Yeah, it's an entertaining
Yeah.
podcast for sure. Okay, so your co-host, Tim Sullivan, stand-up comedian, he has an interesting hobby I've heard you guys talk about on the show a couple times.
Yeah.
Do you care to elaborate on that?
Well, he's a grown adult that I don't want to say borderline obsession, but maybe he loves wrestling, WWE wrestling.
WWE, okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
When we first met about the podcast, met him at his house. We went down to the basement, and he has hundreds of those figures, wrestling figures, and had them out and displayed with a little ring. And it kind of reminded me of the basement of Silence of the Lambs. It was, oh, what are we doing here? Are we going to talk, or are we going to play with these toys? But yeah, he loves the wrestling. We're supposed to. Our agreement with our podcast was he was allowed to talk about wrestling, but we've been kind of skewing away from that and doing interviews mainly with comedians on road stories, on how you get booked, shit gigs, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'll say it. He's obsessed with wrestling.
okay, and you were actually saying he was acting out wrestling matches and coming up with winners as it goes along, right, on your podcast? That
Yeah, that was our first episode with Mark Poulos. He has a notebook where he has his two little wrestlers fighting, and he will record who wins, and he records how many has gotten the most wins, and uh, he needs to get checked up on.
how does he decide who wins? He's like the one in running the thing, so
Yeah, he. I don't get it. I haven't been over to see him do this, but
you should definitely get a video of him doing that and post that on YouTube. Like, especially if he does impersonations like the Hulk and like Macho Man Randy Savage, like "Ooh yeah" and stuff like that. That
yeah,
sounded more like the Kool-Aid Man. I apologize.
yeah.
But
He does that stuff, and there's on our Facebook page for our podcast, Comedy Supernova. He actually had Mick Foley, who was Mankind. He was in his
yeah.
he was in his basement, and he was showing him all of his notebooks and his figures and stuff like that. And Mick Foley just flat out told him, he's like, this is pretty scary. So yeah,
That's impressive when Mick Foley says you're a little bit freaky.
yeah, and it's impressive he's in his basement. But Tim does some gigs with Mick Foley and opens for him and stuff like that. Mick Foley's been, I guess, doing the comedy circuit for a little bit.
Okay, does he do stand up or just tell stories about the WWE/WWF days? Because that he was around then.
I haven't seen a show. I'm guessing. I think he does some stories laced with jokes and some Q&A.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, some. I don't want to say that this is mixed deal, but a lot of alternative entertainment. A lot of those people, like for instance, was it reality TV shows people? They sometimes fall back onto comedy. I'm not gonna berate them or anything like that, but when I say they fall back, they think that's lesser than what they did previously, just to get a paycheck, because moving forward in their career isn't working, so they fall back into comedy. Where, there's people that would love to, work that weekend that Joe Millionaire or some other reality TV
Screech.
show. Yeah. I don't want to be killed if I bring up that guy.
He does stab people.
Yeah. He's one state away, so I gotta watch what I say about Screech. But yeah, he actually got a writer, and I've worked with Screech a couple times. The first time, I'm not gonna lie, was awful. Second time around, he must have got a writer, and it was tuned a little bit better to a stand-up set. But then the stabbing happened, and yeah.
You gotta love that when you stab somebody at your own show. That's crowd work. That's crowd work right
Yeah, you
there.
want to sell any merch? You want to buy any merchandise? No, stab.
Buy it now.
Buy it
Buy
now.
it.
Buy my. Well, he got in trouble the first time he came through Penguins. He was selling a signed script of, I guess, one of the most famous Saved by the Bell episodes. He was signing it, selling it for $15-$20 or whatever. That's not his property, and he got in trouble for it.
Oh, really? Was it the one where Jesse got hooked on like stay awake pills, like the sleeping pills?
No, I don't know if it was that one or not, but yeah, he had these full on scripts, probably 100 pages or whatever, was signing them and selling them, and he got in trouble for it because it wasn't his intellectual property.
Oh, Screech.
Yeah. Well, what can you do? I mean, he was trying to make money. I guess he couldn't think of a funny, stupid T-shirt, so he started printing off scripts.
Yeah, well, I guess that's one way to do it. It'd have to be kind of tough to be Screech in a way too, because well, we're still calling him Screech to this day.
Yeah, yeah. The guy keeps
You
walking
know,
down the street without getting yelled "Screech" at him.
yeah, as Dustin Diamond, of course, as most people probably know by now. But being typecast like that as a nerdy kid, like sure, it was good at the time, but now he's probably wanting to grow up out of it.
Yeah,
But
like I said, he wanted to progress his acting career, didn't pan out, so he fell back on stand up. I mean,
and sex tapes.
and the shit he pulled on that other reality TV show, that weight loss one, where he was pretty much a prick the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, he doesn't seem like a very friendly person, but once again, maybe he's just sick and tired of being Screech.
Yeah.
So, on your show, we'll move away from Screech and bashing people who might come through Penguins and stuff like that, because that's probably not great for business.
Well, I mean, I have little connection with Penguins anymore. I mean, my full time job now, I work in IT now. So
Okay.
so I venture to Penguins maybe every other month. So I mean, I am literally completely out of, the business, the circuit. I find why I did the podcast is I find my times hanging out with the comedians in the green room, hanging out with them and talking, hearing road stories. That was that's currently what I enjoy the most. Going up on stage, not so much anymore.
Yeah, I heard you say like on your podcast that the reason why you didn't go up on stage now is because you weren't enjoying it and wanted to make room for other comedians that actually wanted to have stage time.
Yeah, I mean I I didn't really enjoy it much anymore. I love the performance part of it, but I I cannot write jokes at all. I cannot kick out enough to have a new set every week or literally every month or whatever. I didn't like that process of it. I like improv. I like being in the moment when I'm on stage, but I just why come down once a week or once a month if you're just going to go up and bullshit and not hone a craft or work on material or rewriting jokes for transitioning and stuff like that. I didn't want to do it anymore. I enjoy it. I love being around the guys. I love watching it. I love talking to them after the show, before the show, but me going up on stage, I don't really enjoy it anymore.
Yeah, well, then it's good to step away if you're not enjoying that and let somebody else have a run at it. Do you find that your time on stage is like helping you get guests for your podcast, or like your time that was your involvement in Penguins?
Yeah, I wouldn't be having the guests we had if I wasn't an MC or the manager for a couple years. They wouldn't come through. Um, and most of the guys that I contact, they're like, "Oh, hey, Danny, hey." So they remember me. So they'll come through and do the podcast. I think we just taped our seventh episode, and we release it every month. And every comedian I've contacted has said yes. It would be a great afternoon to sit and talk with you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you were able to keep connections with the comedians that came through while you worked there and are able to incorporate that into your show right now. One of the biggest tips that I've received so far is as far as making it in the entertainment business, which seems kind of some kind of evident, is just networking. And it seems like you've been doing a good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, I check schedules of Penguins. I check schedules of comedians that I would like to have on the show, and if they're passing through, if they're going from Minneapolis to St. Louis, Cedar Rapids is right in the middle there, so I can say, hey, for an hour, for 2 hours, do you want to stop by, tape a podcast, and most of the time the guys are absolutely great. Yeah, and it gives them an outlet to, I guess, not sell merchandise, but to get their name out there. Our podcast, we're up and down with popularity. We can have uh, 300 download episodes, or we can have 1,000 download episodes. It's just who it is, and stuff like that.
Do you plan on going more than once a month at some point, or making it like a weekly podcast?
Our podcast, it costs us money to host online and for our studio session. And even though I enjoy it leading up to the days or the week that we go in and tape, I get pretty excited about it. But until we get some type of sponsorship or some type of advertisement or something like that, we don't want to fork much money into it.
Yeah. So the U.S. Entertainment Agency at the beginning isn't a paying sponsor, or
Here's a little tip. That is the owner of Penguins, Jeff Johnson's company, and I asked him, "Hey, can we put you as a sponsor so it sounds like we're professional and we have sponsorship, and people may ask if they could be our sponsor." They don't pay us.
okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
little secret. I mean, it makes it sound professional. Someone that may listen to the podcast, say, hey, they have advertisement. Maybe we should contact them maybe we can advertise on their show. But that phone call hasn't been made yet.
Yeah, and another thing you can do, like here's what I'm planning on doing when we've already disclosed that I haven't launched yet. So, um, instead of waiting for advertisers to come, like be like, hey, let me run this spot. There's this thing called affiliate advertising where you can have like links. They do it for Audible and everything like that. You
Yeah.
can go onto their website, click affiliate, and then you'll get a link. You can tell people, go sign up at Audible, use my code, and then you get a kickback for it. You don't have to wait for advertisers to want you.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, so
Yeah, we might look into that. I mean, it's just we want to get our show tailored to what we want to do.
yeah.
If it starts becoming a financial burden, um, we may do that. If we want to kick it up a notch and maybe do one of those affiliates. I'll need to speak with my partner Tim Sullivan.
Yeah, the affiliates are cool. Just find one. Don't always recommend like say Audible or something like that because all the big guys
Everyone's
have
doing that,
Audible.
yeah.
But find something that fits your podcast. Even if it's like Penguins tickets or some comedy club tickets, and you get like sell the tickets through your site, and you get a little kickback from it.
Yeah, I mean, we mainly talk about Penguins Comedy Club, but I hope that us talking about the comedy and stuff, it would be a podcast for all comedy clubs. It gets people excited and wanting to go to their local comedy club. I hope because comedy clubs are up and down. In the summer they're slow, in the winter they're busy. A lot struggle, stuff like that. It's unbelievable in the town of Cedar Rapids. People are always like, "There's nothing to do." Well, you have a comedy club, and you just missed. Like, for instance, Tommy John again. I don't know if you heard of him. He is a very funny comic. He was on Last Comic Standing, went pretty far. had a CBS pilot. They didn't pick it up, but he featured at Penguins, and
Oh yeah.
he's pretty big right now. And they could have seen him as a feature act. Again, I'll bring up Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes featured at Penguins, so you could see a future Brian Regan or Seinfeld uh, at Penguins featuring, and then fast forward 10 or 15 years, you can say, "Hey, I saw that guy when he just started out," and a lot of the feature acts they move on to bigger and better things, but just hearing the complaint of there's nothing to do in our town, it's so bad.
Yeah.
It's irritating.
Yeah, I understand that completely. One of the things that bothered me about Cedar Rapids before I moved out of here is over and over again, people didn't want anything new unless it was already known. Like if you had like if say Brian Regan came through now and everybody knew his name, they'd be like, "Oh, Brian Regan, let's go."
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing with like restaurants, the same things with I don't know, other types of businesses. If it's not recognized already, if they haven't heard about it before, they don't really want to give it a chance.
Yeah, it's this town. I don't get it. We just got our first barcade. Have you ever heard of those?
Barcade?
Barcade.
I actually saw something on Facebook about that. I still get a lot of Cedar Rapids feeds, but that actually sounds really cool.
Yeah, I mean, our arcade and pinball machines are my second passion. But yeah, it's a bar with arcade and pinball machines in it, and everyone's losing their shit about it. And they've been around for 5 or 10 years now. And we just got we just got one 10 years after the or 5 years after the big barcade boom, and everyone's just losing their shit about it.
Oh, hey, that's cool. Cedar Rapids has seemed to get quite a few cool things since I've left. They had that new market open up down by where 3rd Street Live was. I don't remember what the name of it was, but
the New Bow Market.
Yeah, New Bow Market.
What's funny is Cedar Rapids is mirroring what South Park's doing on their last season, where, like, take for instance the Whole Foods on South Park. That's the New Bow. It's turning into quite a hipster community.
Oh, that's no good. I'm sorry to hear the hipster word thrown around. That's kind of a harsh word, Danny.
Is it?
Hipster? Yeah,
well,
nobody wants to hang around with hipsters.
Well, that's who's at the barcade is hipsters
drinking their PBR.
Exactly.
Man, it's like I have some friends who actually legitimately like PBR that are not
awful.
Hipster.
It's awful.
But basically, they're in bands and they tour around.
Yeah.
And that's the beer that a lot of bars give away for free when you're a touring musician and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's just grown on them or what, but they don't drink it just because hipsters drink it, But if you're drinking it just because, oh, dude, this is PBR, it's ironic, it's crappy beer, and I want to drink it to look cool, then you got then you got issues,
Yeah.
Wearing your cardigan and your thick rimmed glasses
and your beards.
Yeah, the curled up mustaches. Some of those can be cool, but then it can be overdone too.
Let's bring those people down.
Yeah, damn hipsters.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to the barcade, for the games and stuff like that, and all the hipsters were, with their kale and whatever, drinking their weird lagers. It just trying to play some Kong.
Yeah, like when I drink a beer, like I like to have a good tasting beer. I have a seizure disorder, so I can't really drink to get drunk.
Wow.
So when I drink like a beer, I normally only have one or two. So I like to drink like the darker beers, like the stouts, the Guinnesses, the even up to like an amber ale is fine with me. But I will not go for like the Bud Light, Miller Light,
that's all.
Pee in a can.
Yeah, that's all I do. I'm very bland when it comes to beer. It's Bud Light, Miller Light, or anything else. I just had my first alcoholic blackout about 2 weeks ago.
Really? You're
Oh
getting started kind of late on that, aren't you?
yeah, I'm 36. It never happened before. I would drink probably 2 beers and maybe a shot at Penguins during my early 20s, but I had a I had a not a blackout, but I got pretty drunk one night and I said that's enough. I went up on stage pretty drunk and I said that never again. But yeah, the Iowa game we had a poker night and I walked in and my buddy's like, "Yeah, we're getting rid of our bar, so whatever liquor you want, drink it up." And I took advantage of that, and because I don't know how to make my own drinks, and I just kept drinking rum and coke after rum and coke, and uh, I actually played poker pretty well. I got to heads up, me and another guy, and maybe one or two hands in, I blacked out. No idea what happened. Came to, and everyone's gone in the guy's house. My buddy that has the house, he was waking me up. He's like, "Your wife's on the way." I was like, "Oh, what happened?" He's like, "Well, you talked the other guy into splitting the cash." So it's either I was very convincing and said, "Let's split the money," or I just annoyed the shit out of him so much that he's like, "Just split the money. I'm getting out of here."
Yeah, that could be. When you're blackout drunk, it always makes for interesting stories, not necessarily for you to tell, but for you to hear the next day.
Oh, there's pictures and videos of me on the internet of what I did. It was pretty bad.
As long as you didn't pass out and, have them like
No,
maybe your
no, they
friends were nice, didn't draw like penises on your face or anything like
no,
that.
they took care of me. I had a nice bowl and pretty much a beach blanket on top of me because I started uh, chucking.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah.
All right. So, moving away from puking in bowls and beach blankets, it sounds cozy and all, but back when you were the manager of Penguins Comedy Club, you said you were a manager for a little while.
Yeah, when after the flood, we moved out to a secondary location for 2 years, and I was managing it at that time.
Okay. When you were managing, what did you look for in comedians that you were uh, booking, or when they sent stuff in? What caught your eye?
Well, Jeff Johnson is the booker of Penguins, and I could tell him, "Can you try to go for this person? We didn't really enjoy this feature act. This headliner got drunk and stuff like that." That was pretty much all I had to do with the booking. Um, I think the only comedian that he brought in at my recommendation was Maria Bamford.
Okay.
I asked for Maria, Tignataro. I want to say Pete Holmes. I asked for probably 5 or 6 other comedians. Maria came through and she was absolutely hysterical. She was funny. She was low maintenance. She was all around a great comic on and off stage.
Right on. Right on.
But
So what? Oh, go ahead. Continue.
yeah, I mean, Jeff booked the club. I pretty much ran, who's emceeing that night. It was usually me or another guy. I would run the bar. I would do the advertising on Monday and Tuesday, setting it up for the week. Um, the seating arrangement, the reservations. I was on that side of it. I was more on the back end and not the entertainment on stage part of it.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. I just wanted to see if we could get a little insight on the booking aspect or what you look for. But since you didn't handle that, you're the wrong guy to be asking
Well, no,
on
I mean,
that.
yeah, me and Jeff, our episode that comes out February 1st, Comedy Supernova, is the we had Jeff Johnson, the booker of Penguins. He's been in comedy booking and he owns the Penguins name. It's kind of like in a franchise state right now where he franchised it out to a bar and it's Penguins location or whatever. But we talked to Jeff and Jeff brought up that he looks at 3 things, which I 100% agree. He looks at 3 things in a comic. Are they funny on stage? Do they bring tickets? And are they low maintenance? And he looks for two of those three things.
Okay.
Of course, you want a known comic to it. The more the comic asks for payment, he has to bring in the people and butts in the seats, or it's just a failed weekend. Is he funny on stage? There's some people that are low maintenance and bring in people, but I might not find them funny. Jeff might not find them funny. You might not find them funny, but the crowds find them funny. So, and there are comedians that can be high maintenance, and that I that's the worst kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from what they send to the comedy clubs, some of the bigger comics, it's called a rider. It's pretty much a contract saying, I need this type of hotel, I need this type of room, this type of bed.
No brown M&Ms.
We haven't had anything like that. A funny story, but in the rider is contractual stuff like I need a fruit basket with 3 Coca-Colas in the green room, stuff like that. Norm Macdonald came through Penguins, and he had a rider, he had a contract saying what he wants and stuff like that, and it wasn't outlandish at all, except for when I was reading it, in his green room he wanted a ham sandwich. And after the shows, we were paying him and stuff like that and talking. He's like, yeah, why is there a ham sandwich in my green room? I go, well, I read your contract. That's what you were asking for. He goes, really? That's on my contract? He looked at his contract. He's like, oh, man, I made this contract like 10 years ago, and I was joking with my manager. I wanted a ham sandwich, and he put it in the contract. So he's like, this is the first time in 10 years someone actually got me a ham sandwich.
That's funny. Yeah, I thought you were going to be like he was really difficult to work with or something like that. But
he was the biggest surprise for me, where leading up to it, I was like, he's going to be high maintenance, and he was the exact opposite. He took pictures with everyone, was friendly, talked with me afterwards, sat in my office and talked, and it was a great guy on and off stage. Just he's one of my favorites. He's in my top 3.
That's good. It's always nice when you meet the comedians that are on stage that you've seen on TV and they're actually cool people, and not just trying to pull the rock star treatment, dude, I need my M&Ms in a brandy glass, no brown ones. I need 37 bottles of vodka. And just go on and on. I need a unicorn or something like that in their rider.
Yeah, there's I don't, like I said, I'm out of the circuit, I don't mind divulging, but probably one of the highest maintenance guys was Joe Piscopo.
Oh yeah, like what he asked for, do you know?
He had to have exactly 6 bottled waters, 3 Diet Cokes, 3 regular Cokes. He had 2 shows, and in between, I guess, the 2 shows, someone drank 1 or 2 of the things, and what he did was he toured with his son, which we labeled his name to be Little Piss.
Okay.
And Little Piss would come out, and Dad needs 2 more Cokes. There's only 1 left in there. He would just come out and demand stuff for his dad and stuff like that. So he'd do stuff like that. We actually had to get a desk to put up on our small stage at Penguins, and he was going to do his David Letterman impression behind this desk. Well, we had to find a desk. We actually took one from a basement and brought it in, and he said, it's too big, I need a different one. And he's like, let me just use one of these tables. So he just used like pretty much a bar table for the impression, stuff like that. His sound, it had to be absolutely perfect. It was really weird. He stayed in the green room, didn't talk to anyone. It wasn't that bad, but I mean, when you're demanding that type of stuff, at least be, thankful. There's probably no thank yous at all, and we noticed that anything needing to be done, he would send Little Piss out to tell us.
To do his work, his little minion.
Yeah, his little minion son, and that was 8-10 years ago. Who knows if he's changed or whatever. Maybe he was just getting back out and doing the circuit and was just not coping very well or whatever. Who knows? He could have been a great guy and we just met him on a bad weekend. Anything.
Yeah, that is always an option. You can never really tell from the first meeting of like a celebrity if they're a dick or not.
Yeah.
You know, I remember meeting one celebrity that
I
found out.
I gave names. You have to give names.
Okay, I don't remember his name though. He was the lead singer of Drowning Pool. Before that, he was a lead singer of Soil. Okay. Otherwise, I would give you his name, but I can't remember it. But I met him. He was really distant and off, and like didn't want to talk to anybody. Then I found out later he was on the phone talking because he just got a call that his dad died.
Yeah.
So it's like they have shit going on in their lives, just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
If you meet them multiple times when they're dicks, then give them that label, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There hasn't been, in the 8 to 10 years I was at Penguins, there wasn't that many dicks. I just recall, Piscopo and the one time I met Gallagher.
Gallagher?
Yeah.
I could see him going either way.
There's podcasts that he was on WTF and he was just a prick there. He railed on comics that bring bottled water on stage, and he's absolutely nuts. I mean, he was threatening just to do stand up. I don't want to say threatening. He was saying he was just going to do stand up. Just going to do stand up, no destruction of fruits and vegetables. And I think we had to advertise that it's just stand up and no crazy bashing or whatever. Well, the tickets weren't selling great, and he said, "All right, I'm bringing the mallet." So then we changed the advertisement. He's bringing his mallet, everybody. Tickets still didn't sell. I mean, this was way past his prime. We get there and no one's showing up. I actually didn't have, like they said, we don't need the staff. You can head out. Well, I bailed, and turned out when he did his show, splattered the walls, caked the floor, everything like that. He pretty much barked at the waitresses after the show to clean it up for the second show. Didn't bring it to people, wow. And there was not a thank you out of his mouth. It's like, here, let me help you. This is what we did in the past to get a quick, clean turnaround. Nothing like that. Just pick this up.
That always sucks. You think somebody who makes a living smashing fruit for a living would be a little more grateful, but I don't know. Not to end on a bad note, I got two more questions for you. Okay. First one, who is your favorite performer to have come through Penguins?
Well, I mentioned Norm Macdonald. I said he was in my top three. I'll give you my top three. Number 2 would be Brian Regan. Brian Regan came through Penguins with his brother, Dennis, I want to say in 2001, 2002. They had a Showtime special called Ace of Jokers or something like that. I can't remember. It was some card pun. But those two together, probably one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. It was just, I guess you can say they co-headlined, but Brian Regan and Dennis Regan at a small intimate club like Penguins was pretty amazing. My favorite comic is Jimmy Pardo from Never Not Funny. He is funny on stage, off stage, complete gentleman. I actually have his phone number, and whenever something happens in Jimmy's career, for instance, he opened for The Tonight Show when Conan had it. He was the warm-up, and I sent him a text saying, "Congratulations on the gig," stuff like that. He texted me back, "Hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks, guy, whatever." He just recently got a TV show, Race to Escape, which is on, I think, the History Channel. I kind of fight with myself to text him because it's kind of a privilege to have his phone number, and I have his number because I drove him around to the radio gigs and stuff like that. I don't know if I should have deleted it or whatever, but every time something happens big with him, I want to text him, but I fight the urge to text him because he doesn't think about, me at all. So Jimmy Pardo would be my favorite comedian, touring, and probably of all time.
So, Jimmy, if you end up stumbling upon this show, the one sending you all the texts is Danny Franks. So, yeah, all right, that's really cool, though. That's a good top 3 to have, and cool. All 3 of those came through Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Johnny Carson fan, and some people say he's not stand-up. I think due to his monologue and him doing it for 35 years, Johnny Carson is pretty amazing to me as well.
Yeah. Okay, final question, then I'll let you get about your day. My show is called Uncontained. You can take a minute to think about the answer to this if you would like. How do you live uncontained?
How do I live my life uncontained with a wife and 3 kids?
It can be tricky.
I am pretty contained. I'm a pretty big gamer. From I guess computer games, like I said, arcade, pinball. I at one time we're planning on moving. I had a pretty big arcade and pinball collection in my basement, and that is something a lot of people don't really aspire to have. It is pretty amazing, and when I was at my peak and had so much, I want to say that's when I was living uncontained, because no one was going to stop me from driving 2 to 3 hours to pick up a Q-Bird.
All right, fair enough.
So hopefully that was a good enough answer for that.
Fair enough. And hopefully now your podcast is an outlet for that as well.
Yeah, I've been toying with opening another podcast for arcade and pinball.
Oh, that could be interesting. Very niche,
yeah.
Right there.
Ottumwa, Iowa is the arcade capital of the world.
Arcades and meth, right?
Arcades and meth and pig slaughterhouses.
Could you stay up all night on meth playing pinball?
Hey, my wife's upstairs. My in-laws are from Ottumwa.
Okay.
What a fucking dump of a town. They are roadkill eating, freaking skull chewing hillbillies. It's when I had to go down to meet the in-laws, it was, I mean, they were bragging about the pranks that they do. What they do is they take heads from the dumpsters, pig heads, from the dumpsters of the pig slaughter plant, and just toss them around the city as a prank. Throw it on someone's driveway. That's apparently fun for people down there. I mean, it is. Oh man, I thought I was gonna get killed every time I've gone down there.
So basically, Ottumwa is what the rest of the nation thinks all of Iowa is.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So it does exist in Iowa, and thank you very much for enlightening me on the pig head tossing.
Yeah, let's take a bunch of people down. We've taken down Piscopo, Screech, and now Ottumwa, Iowa. There's not. Yeah, you're not going to be getting any emails on this.
They take football to the whole new level. They do the uncured football, and just they play it with, instead of pigskin, let's play a little pig's head. Yeah. Well, thank you, Danny, for joining me today and being on Uncontained.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Where can people get a hold of you, get a hold of your podcast? What days do you broadcast, or what days do you post news shows?
Comedy Supernova. We put it out the first of every month. You can see it, or you can listen to it in several places. We're on Stitcher, we're on iTunes, or you can go directly to the website, and that is TPSP or TSP. I can't even remember. I think it's TPSP productions.com, and that's they have many podcasts under their network. But yeah, Facebook, or we're on Twitter as well, Comedy Supernova. Just look us up and drop by and say hi.
All right, thanks a lot and have a great day, Danny.
Thank you, Aaron. You too.
Just to clarify, the network that Comedy Supernova can be found on, in addition to Stitcher and iTunes, is tpspproduction.com/comedy-supernova. That's what you need to know to get to his show, or you can just go the traditional route, Stitcher, iTunes, and while you're there, rate and review his podcast and mine too. Yes, it helps us all out in the ratings, lets people know about us. Rate, review, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever our podcasts are posted. Please, I'm not trying to be greedy. We're giving you free content, and all I'm asking for is a little bit of help, a little boost in the ratings so more people find out where they can find this podcast and others like it. Yes, please. Thank you. I'm done begging. Thanks again to Danny Franks for coming on and talking with me today. And until next time, live uncontained.